I got my mission call to the Patagonia, and I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be this beautiful place with water and all these kinds. It kind of had this, what you think of it as with the Patagonia. And we fly into Comodoro, and it was actually nighttime when we got there, so you couldn't really see very much, and we went and we were tired. But then the next morning, when the sun came up, it was this desert, and I'm thinking, okay, they've sent me to the wrong place. Like I got mixed up. Maybe I didn't understand, but yeah, it was the right place. So I kind of first I was taken aback by, oh wow, this looks a lot like Utah, Arizona type place. And then it was great meeting my trainer. There's great meetings right whenever you get to the mission field that help kind of integrate and get you come up to speed with what's going on. And then we didn't wait around any time and took off right to our first area. And so that was an interesting long trip to get to the first area. And so yeah. So the Comodoro Rivadavia mission is a fairly new mission. It was formed in 2013, and it came from two other missions, Neuquén and Buenos Aires Norte. And it is a very large, geographically a very large mission. It is the second largest mission in the Americas. There's only one bigger one in Brazil. Just to give kind of a reference point, its size is just about kind of the, from the U.S.-Canadian border to the U.S.-Mexican border. That's about how long it runs, about 950 miles. And so it's a very large mission. The church, there are 3 stakes in the mission, and then the rest are districts. So there's 3 other districts in the mission. A church attendance varies widely in between where you are in the mission. In some places, you'll have a normal attendance of 120 members a week, and then you'll have other places that there will only be 10 or 15 members that attend during the week. So you kind of get to see the whole broad spectrum. You get to see wards that are really function with all callings filled and that kind of thing, and then you see other places that are really developing and trying to grow. The southern part of Argentina, so the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission, it's an interesting place. It's very sparsely populated, but by many means, it is a very economically well-off place compared to other parts of Latin America. And that kind of leads people to be a lot less believing, although many have this, well, you could call it this notion that many in South America are Catholic, staunchly Catholic. You don't find that so much in the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission. You find a lot of evangelicals, and other than that, you find a lot of people who just don't practice religion in general. A lot of people who are well off, they're very comfortable with their lives. And so one of the big things that we faced in our mission was, how do we, treat this? How do we show these people, even though you do have a good job, you get paid well, you have a nice house, the gospel can still relate to your life, because that is a very difficult situation to be put in. Some of the other interesting things is that in the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission, the members inside of the mission live farther away from a temple than any other members in all of the Americas and in North and South America. The distances that they have to travel in order to get to a temple are extremely large. And so with President Rogers, my mission president, one of the main goals is to work to get a temple for that area, because they're so isolated from it. It really is a challenge for them to go. Many members go once in their life, and then they go back and they're not able to go again, just because it is challenging, not only economically but just logistically, being able to get there. Your days on a bus, or you have to take plane rides, and that racks up costs, those kinds of things. So that's a big challenge that the church faces in that area of the world. Like I said, is a very large place. So the mission itself, you spend a lot of time traveling. That's just the nature of it. And in your mission, in the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission, you don't get together as a whole mission. That just never happens. Whereas you see that in other missions, it's a lot of zone activities, and then just a lot of traveling. President Rogers served his mission in Argentina South back, I won't say when, he might not like that, but he served his mission back in the day, we can say, and he actually opened the area of Comodoro Rivadavia. He opened the branch, and he had 6 members, and whenever he left, there was 30-something odd members. And, you know, in 2013, he gets called back to open the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission. So for him, that's kind of a legacy, you know, to go and open an area, something that he saw with 6 members, and now it has its own mission. And so you can definitely tell his love that he has for that area. So I served in the Mission Argentina Comodoro Rivadavia from 2013 to 2015. I started in an area called San Benito in Rio Gallegos, which is way down south in Argentina. Then I went to a place called Parque in Trelew. Then I went to Roca in Madryn. And from there, I went to 9 de Julio in Comodoro. Then I was in a place called Kilómetros, also in Comodoro. And then I finished my mission in a great little town nobody's ever heard of in the southwest corner of La Provincia de Santa Cruz, called 28 de Noviembre. The food in Argentina is wonderful. You hear a lot about it. And I think misconception that I had whenever I went was that I was going to eat a lot of spicy food. They don't like spicy food at all. So if you don't like spicy food, you're good to go. Some people do eat it, but they will never force on you something that's extremely hot. You know, you're not going to be able to eat. They eat a very kind of European-based food is what I found too. So they eat gnocchis. That's my favorite thing. It's like a potato pasta with a meat sauce on it. Pizza. The pizza is a little different than here in the United States, but nevertheless, it's pizza. Milanesa is a very big thing. That's just kind of like a breaded piece of meat that can either be fried or baked. Then asado is really famous in Argentina. In the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission, for the most part, whenever you have an asado, you're not going to get a lot of beef. You're going to get a lot of cordero, a lot of lamb, because that's what's kind of native to that area, and that's what they eat. There's a family in Trelew that's the best cordero that you'll ever eat. But it really is, it's a great culinary place. People and culture, they are some of the most loving people I've ever met in my entire life. They want to please you no matter what. They really just want you to be happy. You're never going to have people, you know, who are, of course, as a missionary, there's going to be people who are going to be rude, but it's not a common occurrence. Most people are really open to talk. Argentines love to talk. They love to have a conversation. They love to get to know you, where you're from, why you're there. And so it's really easy to have a conversation as a missionary with people because they want to talk. They like to talk. So in Argentina, hey, ¿qué anda vos? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué estás haciendo? Argentine Spanish, they are kind of particular about this. They don't speak Spanish, they speak Castellano. And so like that, one of the main things, a marked thing for Argentina is the sh sound. So anytime you have a Y, a double L, you say a sh sound. And then just vocabulary words. You know, for example, in Argentina, you don't really say the word pues. I mean, a lot of people who speak Spanish say pues, vamos a hacer. And in Argentina, you don't say pues. It doesn't come up very much. And other than that, they're just different words, you know, different words for objects and things like that. Another big thing is that Argentina is famous for speaking in vos, which is the informal, you know, second person kind of thing. So instead of where it would be tu, in a lot of other countries, they speak in vos. And there's, you know, the conjugations, those kinds of things, it's really simple to understand. It's not very difficult at all. They do speak fast, but I wouldn't say they speak irregularly fast for any other kind. In Argentina, what's interesting about their Spanish is a lot of accents depend on what part of Argentina you're from. So if you're from the capital, if you're porteño is what they're called, you know, you're going to have a very marked sh whenever you speak. If you're from Córdoba, you're going to have this sing-song rhythm to whenever you're talking. If you're from the north, then you might not really say the sh. You might have a different type of accent around it there. So in Argentina, there's many different types of accents. So the last place I served my mission, my absolute favorite, was a little town in the southwest corner called 28 de Noviembre. And 28 de Noviembre sits right on the border with Chile and Argentina, and it's got a little sister city just a few miles away called Rio Turbio. The main industry in that area is there's a coal mine that's been in function for quite some time, and in the last presidency in Argentina, they kind of really put a lot of money into revamping that operation. So it's brought in a lot of people that live there and work there. They're also at this time building a new coal-fired power plant, and so there's a lot of industry. A lot of people have come from other parts of Argentina and other countries in Latin America to come work at this site. So it's a really dynamic place because nobody that's there is from there. Everybody that's there has come from different places. You know, they're displaced from their families, and a lot of really great people. It's, like I said, it's nestled right along the Cordillera, so the Andes mountain range. It's absolutely beautiful. It gets really cold. It gets really cold there during the winter and lots of snow. But they're little, small, quiet towns. It's a great place. 28 de Noviembre really is a great place. I would say that 28 de Noviembre is pure Patagonia. When you're out there, you wake up every morning, you look out, and what you're looking at is Patagonia. You know, you see the big, huge grass fields. The sky is just huge. I mean, I've never seen a sky so big in my entire life. And it's just, that is Patagonia. When you're out there, you're in the Patagonia. Big mountain ranges. I mean, you look off in the distance and you can see, actually from a part in Rio Turbio, which is the sister city with 28, they're really close, you can actually look out and see Torres del Paine, which is a really famous national park in Chile. National Geographic is always taking pictures and sending somebody down there because it's absolutely beautiful. You can actually look out and see it out there, and it's absolutely spectacular. So the fourth city I served in was Comodoro. I was there for quite some time. Comodoro is another really big city. It actually is, it's an interesting city economically because it has the highest consumption rate in all of Argentina, which means that people in Argentina buy more things than anywhere else, or people buy more things in Comodoro than they do anywhere else in Argentina. And so again, the economy is very strong there. A lot of oil companies. So in Comodoro, you see a presence of American oil companies such as Schlumberger. You see also they're just different companies like Exxon and Chevron, and so like they employ a lot of Halliburton. They employ people in Comodoro that work in the oil fields that are, again, the oil fields aren't in the city. They're going to be far out away from the cities, but they're based in these cities, and so that kind of is what keeps the economy growing. Comodoro is an old city. It was back in the early 1900s, again founded after they found oil there and went in to explore that oil, and they've kind of been there ever since. It's a growing city. It is quite large. Nobody's ever sure which is bigger, Trelew or Comodoro. And the Mission, that's kind of the question. Which one is bigger? Nobody can really tell. But Comodoro is spread out. It's very long because there's lots of different places. They're kind of measured by kilometers. So they'll say, oh, in kilometer 3, there's this place, or in kilometer 5, you know, this kind of thing. Comodoro can also, in certain areas, it's a little more dangerous certain times, but again, by all means, the Patagonia is a really safe place. Comodoro falls under that. I never had any problems in Comodoro with anything scary happening to me. And it is very hilly in Comodoro. There's a lot of hills because it's kind of set into a hill. And the wind, again, the wind in Comodoro, it can get going. It can really get going pretty bad. So when you're walking around, the wind is very strong. One of the interesting things about Comodoro, it's got a place kind of south of Comodoro out on the beach. It's called Ratatili, and it's kind of a little inlet beach. And it is a place that attracts very wealthy people. We're talking people that are millionaires by all standards. And so it's a very posh town. And that's a popular attraction for a lot of people to go to this beach during the summertime and cool off. It's a very large beach. And so that brings in a lot of people. Other than that, Comodoro is not a tourist attraction at all. There's not many things in Comodoro that somebody says, hey, I want to take a trip to that place for. My third area was an area called Puerto Madryn. It probably ranks up there in my favorite. Puerto Madryn's a little port town. They run off of the industries that kind of keep it thriving there, the fishing industry, and also there's a large aluminum plant. So the economy is quite well there. It's a great city. It's a little beach town, and everything kind of runs along the beach. It sits on this gulf. and so it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, very calm city. The church is really strong there, and it again is another tourist destination. People come. What it has is during specific times of the year, the southern right whale actually comes in to breed in this gulf because it is calm. And they don't know why, but for some reason these whales jump and they put on these spectacular shows. So anytime you're walking anywhere near the beach, you can look out and you'll see whale tails coming out. You'll see whales jumping up out of the water. So it's an absolutely beautiful area. Right close to Puerto Madryn is a place called La Península Valdés, and it's actually on the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it is a place that is a very protected wildlife reserve because it contains different flora and fauna that are unique to the Patagonia. You'll get killer whales that come there, sea lions again, the other southern right whales, just many different types of animals and plants. Puerto Madryn has a very well-known throughout Argentina, very well-known soccer club actually. They actually compete in one of the higher divisions, so that's a big thing in Puerto Madryn. A lot of people really like to go and support the teams in Puerto Madryn. So I started off in Rio Gallegos. It's a city down, it's actually the last city on the continental Americas before it breaks off and becomes islands on the end of Argentina. It's a relatively large town by Patagonia means. It's nothing like, Salt Lake City or Provo or anything like that. It is very windy. That is the number one thing in Rio Gallegos. You're going to get wind. I mean, we're talking winds of well above 100 kilometers an hour. So very strong winds. They also make a joke in Rio Gallegos that it's one of the only places in the world that you can get all 4 seasons in one day. You can go outside and it's sunny, then all of a sudden it's going to be snowing, and then that snow will turn to rain, and then then it's going to be windy. You just never know what you're going to get, outside. It's a fairly well-off town. It's very safe. My time there never had anything scary or anything happen like that. There's a lot of great work. A lot of people in Rio Gallegos have come there to work. There's a lot of oil that works out of that province and out of that city, a lot of government work. And so that's why a lot of the families are there either to work in those industries or work and support jobs for those industries. The church is strong there. It's a little district. There's 3 different branches there. Some cool places outside of the city. So Rio Gallegos is kind of the gateway to what's called El Calafate, which is a very popular tourist destination, internationally known for the Glacier Perito Moreno, which is one of the largest glaciers, one of the largest growing glaciers in the world. And so a lot of people, it's a kind of a place that you can fly in there and then take a bus to this glacier. So yeah. So the second city that I served in was a city called Trelew. And Trelew was actually established back in the early 1900s, late 1800s by Welsh immigrants. And they came and they sit it. So the name Trelew is actually a Welsh name. It's not a Spanish name. It is the largest city in the mission. There is a central area, which is where kind of everything in the city goes on, and then everything that's outside of the city is just living. Everything in the economy in the Trelew area just kind of runs off of building, running, your little stores or working in the grocery store, those kinds of things. Some of the bigger industry, again, is the oil fields out away from the city. Those kinds of things support a lot of jobs. Trelew has a lot of history. You can see kind of the impact that the city has on its architecture, that kind of things. Because it is a bigger city, I would say that it's more dangerous than the other cities that we have in the mission, but it's still, you don't have barely any problems just because the Patagonia is very calm. So there's a few popular tourist destinations outside of Trelew. So Gaiman is a little city, probably 20 minutes outside of Trelew, and it was also another Welsh colony. But they've kind of preserved their Welsh history there. They some still speak the language. There's little tea houses, and one of them's pretty famous because some British royalty have gone to visit those areas, and so that attracts a lot. And then south of Trelew, about an hour and a half, there's a place called Punto Tombo, and what it is a penguin reserve. So where penguins, they go during the during the summer months in order to hatch their eggs and those kinds of things. And that's a very popular tourist destination also. I'm actually reading a book right now about the history of the Patagonia. It's kind of interesting. It is a very rugged place. It's always kind of been. It's the wild, wild west of South America that's never been conquered. You know, it's still, whereas here in the United States, we had our wild, wild west, but now it's settled, and it kind of is what it is. You can find little patches. For the most part, the Patagonia is still uncharted. It's huge. I've never seen a place so big. There's no place in the United States that rivals just how immense and how vast it is, and it's almost empty, you know. So it's kind of an interesting place. So it kind of has left a mark in history on that kind of thing. It's often been a place of conflict in between Chile and Argentina. They kind of go back and forth over who owns the Patagonia. Does Argentina own it? Does Chile own it? And so it kind of is an interesting place. I think once you go there, the Patagonia tells its own story. You know, it has these winds that blow. It's empty. It's kind of a place where one turns in on itself. You know, it starts to kind of introspect and think a lot about who I am, what I am, just because there's nothing else to think about there, you know. It's a beautiful place. A lot of the history, so Charles Darwin in the Beagle Voyage, he sailed right through the Patagonia. That's where Charles Darwin started making some of his first observations about evolution and those kinds of things. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, whenever he robbed the bank, he was running from the authorities. He went to Fort Worth, Texas, and he takes off and goes to the Patagonia. And he lived down there for 20 years. Or, no, I don't know if it's 20 years. He lived down there. Butch Cassidy lived down there for some time until he started terrorizing people again and had to leave. But it's a place that really is beautiful. It's known for its natural beauty, for still kind of being really untouched from the rest of the world. I think the craziest experience, and this was a one-time thing. It never happened. It never happened to anybody else before. It never happened afterwards. But one day in the morning time, we were still in our apartment studying, and all of a sudden we hear gunshots outside and people running around. And so there was the ladies who owned the pension. Well, her and her daughter, they were outside. And I heard them yelling, so I waited till the gunshot stopped, and I jumped up and ran to go see if they're okay. And I was kind of coming down the hall. I hear people on top of the roof, and I'm thinking, okay, this is getting kind of crazy. And as I come around the corner, the door to our apartment bust open, and in come 10 police officers. And I'm like, whoa, okay, don't shoot me. This is okay. I'm not doing anything. Come to find out, someone had robbed a bank in the center of town, had come towards where we were and ditched the car. And because the gates were open at the bottom, they had run up the stairs and run on top of the roof, and the cops were coming after them. So it was kind of all transpiring right there. So I think that was probably the crazy one, was the cops busting into my apartment looking for somebody. That they caught them eventually. But that was definitely a wild experience. I think some of the most spiritual experiences were the people who might have been the hardest, you know? The investigators who were the hardest. I can remember in my last area, I'd been on a mission for some time, and at the end of your mission, you love what you do, but you also feel tired. You know, you've had these 2 years or these 18 months that have kind of been weighing on you, and you start to feel it, and it's easy to kind of get discouraged. Even though you had the experience and the insight at that point to know that it'll all work out, I was kind of feeling tired, and we had this great family, and we just had to work with them, and it was every day. It was back and forth. It was explaining things over and over and again. And it was such a spiritual experience for me, because I think in that moment I could kind of see how the Lord, how our Heavenly Father, how the Spirit is with us. You know, how many times do they have to come back to us and explain something and work with us daily? And so I kind of gained that appreciation, and also taught me, how can I be easier? How can I be more teachable? How can I be easier to deal with? And that family, they're baptized. They're active in the church today. And so that hard work, it paid off. And I can also see how the hard work in my own life will pay off. And it really was just a wonderful spiritual experience. That one was extremely spiritual for me, because it wasn't just a one-time event. It was over a course of a time. It was a spiritual event. Another spiritual experience that stands out to me again was a person who was difficult. She raked us over the coals a few times when we were teaching her. You kind of had to be pretty thick-skinned to be around her because she was going to take you to town on some things. And I remember one day we were there teaching her, and my companion and I, we just knew we had to challenge her to read the Book of Mormon, that if she'd read it, she'd know it was true. And this is a woman who she was not accepting of anything. She really just didn't want it. But we knew there was a reason that we were in her house. And in probably one of the most spiritual moments I've ever been in, her and her daughters were there, and we started testifying about the Book of Mormon, and we talked about how the Book of Mormon can help us know whether we can have an eternal family. And they all broke out in tears, and we were in tears, and we challenged her directly and quite strongly. If you read the Book of Mormon, you'll know it's true. And so she said she would, and we went back a day or two later, and guess what? She had read the Book of Mormon, and she knew it was true. And that was one of those moments when I really felt that the Spirit in those moments is who's teaching, and it really was such a great testimony builder. At the beginning of my mission, I thought the word for farm was naranja, and the word for farm is granja. So I was talking to somebody about their farm and these kinds of things, and I was saying naranja, which is the word for orange. And so I'm like, oh, like, do you take care of your orange? Do you live on your orange? Like, what do you have at your orange? And so I think they understood what I was meaning. They didn't laugh too hard at me, but in retrospect, like, I'm sure it sounded pretty funny. The most extreme weather was probably getting caught in a hailstorm one time, because then you had this mix of the extremely strong wind and then this ice that was hitting me in the face. So that was probably the most extreme weather as far as that. Other than that, the other extreme weather would be just tons of snow. I mean, snow that it's kind of hard to walk in. You can't see in front of you, just really heavy snow. The hail was probably it was pretty big, so quarter size around there. And so getting hit in the face with that wasn't very fun. The most exotic food, so that would probably have to be, it's called tripa gorda, which is the big intestine. That was extremely exotic, yeah. Yeah, exotic, that's a good word for it. One time, the group of kids tried pulling a gun on us, but we just kept walking. They didn't do anything. They kind of left us alone once they saw they weren't going to get anything from us. But that was the only time anybody in our mission had ever really faced a gun, so. I think one of the greatest life lessons I learned on my mission was definitely just to never give up. At times, missionary work is hard. In the Patagonia, it can be hard at times, and just like anywhere else in the world. But what I learned was just to push through it, to always work through, to depend on the Lord, then it eventually is going to come together. And if you're doing what you're supposed to, if I did what I was supposed to, at the end of the day, I could say, I did my part. I'm human. I can only do so much with what I've been given, and I just got to make sure that that's what I'm doing. Take really sturdy, really strong luggage. You're going to travel a lot. The traveling's hard, so take strong luggage. Don't take huge bags. There's lots of space constraints, so make sure you do. Cold weather gear. You're going to run into cold weather no matter where you serve in the mission, so make sure you take good cold weather gear. Good boots in order. Sisters and elders alike, take good boots that can go through the mud. There is so much mud. There's a lot of rain, a lot of snow, a lot of wind, so you're going to want really good shoes. And then one of the things most important for me was a good camera. You're going to have awesome experiences, the most beautiful places you've ever been to. You're going to want to take good pictures, so make sure you invest in a good camera. Another thing is sleeping bags are great. In our mission, we always use sleeping bags because it does get cold. There is heating and those kinds of things in all of the pensions, but the sleeping bags are great because like I said, you travel a lot, and so being able to take those with you, take your bedding with you, just a sleeping bag, it's good. A hard experience, and I know I've talked about this a lot, but it was the weather. I remember writing in my journal one day, don't ever wait for the perfect conditions to work, because you'll wait forever. And that really was hard for me. Being from Florida, being from sunny, warm weather, that kind of thing, it was hard a lot of times to find the desire to look outside and see that blizzard and say, okay, I'm going to go knock doors. That's really hard to do. Or to look outside and see the rain coming, and it's easy to think I could just sit in here and work on something else because it's going to be bad out there today. And so learning how to be independent of that, how to work no matter what, that really was difficult but rewarding, of course. I actually became a master at Excel on my mission. I didn't know much about Excel before, but I was in the office for some time and had to do some Excel. So that's an interesting skill that I gained on my mission. Many people don't think I'm going to go on my mission and learn how to work Microsoft Excel, but that was an interesting skill. Yeah. Bribing the bus drivers so they'll let the sisters get their bags on the colectivo. But that's an interesting skill. So but I was in the office for some time and had the opportunity to help my mission president along with my companion do transfers. And that, I wish every missionary that goes on a mission could see how that's done, because in that moment I really gained a testimony of my mission president and that he is called of the Lord. I watched him say, look, this is where we should move this person. And we'd all three say, that's probably not a good move. Like, that seems crazy. But then 3 weeks into the transfer, we go, wow, that really was a smart move. That was an inspired move. And so getting to see the Lord work through my mission president was an absolutely amazing experience, to see how the Lord works, that he really does call people. So for transfers, what we would do is somewhere along in the transfers, the 6-week transfer, week 5, the end of week 5, try to do it in time. We would get together in his house and we would say a prayer. We'd all kneel down, we'd pray, and then we'd get up and we'd go to work. Moving 200 people around, and it is a very spiritual experience, but it's also methodical. You have to be careful to kind of maybe not put a person in a place they've already been or with a companion they've already been. So we'd set the board and we'd move the people around, and then we'd look at it and find where maybe we've gone wrong, and then we'd pray about it. And then we'd stare at it and we'd say, okay. And for some reason, we like doing it late at night. So we'd start at 9 o'clock at night and, that kind of thing, and work on it. And we'd be tired. And eventually we'd get to a point and say, well, it's not done yet. We could definitely all say it's not done yet, but we're going to come back at it again tomorrow. So then we'd leave, and my companion and I, oftentimes we'd take notes on where certain people were, certain questions we had, and then we'd pray about it. We'd go off, we'd pray about it, and then we'd get back together the next day and go back at it again, and we'd talk about the answers that we'd received. And it was amazing the amount of times that we'd all received the same answer about a person and where they should go. And then we would just go on it until we finally got to a spot where we could kneel down and ask the Lord, and he would tell us, yes, this is how my missionaries moved. And we'd say, okay, we'll move them this way. If you got called to Comodoro, congrats. It is the greatest mission in the world. Definitely the greatest mission in Argentina and the world. It is a great place. I remember whenever I got my call to Comodoro, you probably had the same reaction that I did, where in the world is Comodoro? But it is a wonderful place. The 2 years that I got to serve in Comodoro in that mission and those areas really was a wonderful time. One of the things I would like to testify about is that you are called to the Lord. Before my mission, I thought, oh, well, I'm going to this random place. Never really gave it much thought about whether my call did come from the Lord or not. But being there, going through the experiences, and now looking back as a returned missionary, I know that that's where I had to be called to. That's where I belong. That's where the Lord needed me. That's where I needed to be. And I'm sure it's the same for you. Love Comodoro, love the people, love the area. Love is probably, it's cliche, but it's one of the most important things, and that's what will really transform your mission. Work hard. In Argentina and Comodoro, you've got to work hard, but it's a rewarding work. It's wonderful. I know that whoever's called to be the mission president is called of the Lord. I know through personal experiences that's who the Lord wants to be there. He leads and guides the Lord's work in that area, and he has the keys to do that. I know that there are people who are prepared. As missionaries, a lot of time we lay preparatory work, and so you as a newly called missionary might find somebody that I talked to, years ago, and you never know who is ready. The only way you can know is if you talk to them. I know that the church is true. I know that the Book of Mormon, if you testify to the people, if you have a testimony of it, that you'll be able to help people have the testimony and the blessings in your life that come through the gospel. The temple is the goal. Help everyone that you meet find the temple in their lives and the spot that it has, and how they can get to the temple and partake of those ordinances and covenants that are there. I know that the church is true. I know that there's a prophet who leads and guides and calls missionaries, that the apostles are also prophets and seers and revelators in this time. I'm thankful for the opportunity that I had to serve in Comodoro, for the wonderful place it is, for all of the great people that live there, and that I was able and privileged to be a representative of the Lord for the time. And I share these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I remember flying in, and we got off the airplane. It was like this tiny little airport in Comodoro. And we get into these, it was late at night, but we get into these little vans, and we're driving, and I'm looking out the window, and I literally am looking at the area, and I'm like, I do not want to serve here. This is the ugliest place I've ever seen. It's like this desert. And everyone talks about the Patagonia, and they're like, oh, it's the prettiest place ever. And there's parts that are beautiful, but where I was coming off was not, no. And I was like, I do not want to serve here. Funny thing though is that I ended up serving there in the middle of my mission in that area that has the airport in it. It ended up being, it's one of my favorite areas, but so don't judge a book by its cover. So we went to the mission home, and we're very welcomed, and it was a wonderful experience. And then after we did a couple day training and met our trainers and such, we went on bus I went up to Puerto Madryn, and the bus ride, the shaking of the bus and the length of it, I don't know, I think it takes a little while to get accustomed to bus rides and not feel car sick. But yeah, so realize that your trainer is they are a wealth of knowledge, and that even if you can't understand them. So I had a Latin trainer who was so very patient with me with my Spanish, and I thought I knew a lot more Spanish than I realized. And then my second companion was actually from North America, but she had grown up speaking Spanish. And so when we got together, she's like, yeah, hermana, you're Spanish? You're not conjugating most of your verbs. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't realize that, because my trainer was just very patient and trying to help me speak. So her big thing was be willing to make mistakes and just speak and express yourself and not hold back. And I think that helped me a lot with my confidence in sharing, even though it probably didn't make sense to most people. I felt like I learned a lot during those first couple months, because I chose to get out of my comfort zone and realize that was just for anybody, it's going to be a transition. It's going to be hard, and how you approach it makes a big difference on the type of experience you're going to have. You can decide that what you're going through is really hard, and therefore you're just going to be upset about it. Or you can say, you know what, this is really hard. I'm just going to speak anyway and keep talking, which made a big difference. I remember the first couple of days walking through my area, feeling totally lost. I do not know how this all fits together. But I remember walking we went to a couple members' homes, and a couple different people were teaching, and how willing the people were to love and wanted you to be there and were grateful for your service. And even though I didn't understand the majority of what they were saying, that's what I loved about the people there and throughout my mission, that they're very grateful for my service. And obviously there are people that aren't as grateful for it, but I felt like most of the Latin people were had their arms open and willing to welcome you there. So I served I went into the MTC July 31st, 2013, and then I got back the end of January 2015. And then I started in Puerto Madryn. I went up and down a lot. So I started in Puerto Madryn. I went down to Rio Gallegos. Then I was in Comodoro, in Prospero Palazzo. And then I went down to Rio Grande, in Centro. And then I went back up to and finished in Trelew. Our mission, my mission president liked to refer to it as like 4 missions chunked into one. So there was like the northernmost part, which is the Puerto Madryn and Trelew area. And that is, there are 2 stakes up there. It's a little bit different culture. It's warmer, so they have like more tourists that'll come through, especially in Puerto Madryn. When I was there, I was there during more of like the summer months, and they'd have big boats come in with tourists, and you'd hear like the huge horn of all of like the tourists leaving and then coming back onto the boat. And so it changes up a little bit more of the atmosphere. There's a lot of different types of people that come through. And then you go to like the middle area where there's Comodoro and then Caleta Olivia. They are more of like the oiling cities where a lot of people work at oil rigs or different things to help out with that industry, which changes the family dynamics a little bit because some of the fathers or different people that work in it will go out and work during the week, and then like beyond 10 days and then come back for 5 and then leave again. And so it's a little bit different there. Not everyone does that, obviously, but people are more focused on their work. It's interesting, as you move farther south, more people are like, they're there just for work. It's not that their family has lived there for a substantial amount of time. So then you move down to Rio Gallegos, which is like the city farthest south, like on South American continent. It's really windy, and there are a lot of people that work down there. It's fairly well off and nice. And then you go and you pass through Chile to get back down onto the island of Tierra del Fuego, and that has several areas down there. That is all one district right now. They're working towards becoming a state. Oh, and Rio Gallegos is also a district. And they're working towards having a stake down there. But a lot of people that at least have moved to Rio Grande, they don't have a lot of family there. So most people just worked in factories and have their immediate family. A little bit colder. It's really cold down there during the winter and has it's not so much that it's cold, but it has a lot of wind chill. So that was my only area that we actually got told to stay in because there was so much wind one day that things were flying everywhere and you would have gotten hit. And then you go down to Ushuaia, which is the beautiful area of the mission. It's more like Utah with beautiful, beautiful mountains, but then it has the ocean, beautiful area. So that's, my mission president always said that he felt like he went to different missions as he would travel within our mission. In all of those areas, there's a wide range of attendants. So there are the stakes, and up in the north that have stronger wards that have a lot more people going to church. But then as you move farther south, it varies. There's some wards that are really strong, like in Comodoro. I had one ward that was really strong, but I know there are some other wards even in that stake there that have very small attendance. But then you can go down to Rio Grande, and there's some different branches that have stronger attendance than others. So it varies a little bit. I want to say the smallest, or where was I? I was in Rio Grande. No. I was in Rio Gallegos, and we had about 40 people come to church. I was never in really small branches. They usually put sisters, well, depends, but they usually put sisters where the wards are a little bit stronger. And so the smallest I ever had was 40 people at church. In Puerto Madryn, we got up to like 100, 115 max, but it changes, and since I've gone back to certain areas, they've been strengthening, having more people come to church. So there were three like main religions down in the Patagonia area or in the mission. There was the evangelicals, which is very interesting because you'd walk by their churches, which are usually just in like little homes that they'd be renting out, and you'd hear the loud music. And so there were like those types of people. And then there were like the Catholics that most of them actually never went to like misa and like participated. They would go for holidays, but they, like, when you would talk to them, especially if they really didn't want to talk to you, they'd just tell you that they were Catholic and that they would go, and then you start asking them more about their attendance, and they're like, oh wait, no, I actually only go during holidays or with special family events. And when they view their baptism as like the baptism, so it's very hard for them to accept that there would be a change, or they need to be rebaptized. Same with evangelicals, actually. But we did teach a substantial amount of the Catholics, people that were willing and more open to it. And then there were Jehovah's Witnesses. And we would actually pass them a lot, especially in Rio Grande. There were a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, at least in my area, that would go out and also be knocking on doors. So people, when you would go to knock on doors, except there we would knock on doors, but the rest of the mission you'd actually clap when you get to, because there are like fences in front of their houses, so you would clap at the fence and hope that somebody would come. They would assume that you were Jehovah's Witnesses because Jehovah's Witnesses just kept making rounds and rounds, no matter if like they'd already been to an area and everyone had told them no. They were persistent. Admire that. And so those are like the three main groups, religious groups. There are a chunk of people also that really don't believe, and even if they are Catholic, sometimes they don't really believe or understand who Heavenly Father is. So you have to deal with that in teaching people. But most people have heard of Jesus Christ, which really helps to have like that common knowledge with them. In the middle of my mission, I was teaching a woman named Mariela, and when we got there, she had been, there are two sisters that had just been placed there, so, and they just started teaching her, and she had a baptismal date, but wasn't giving up smoking. A lot of people smoke there. It's fairly common. She hadn't given it up. So in my mind, I was coming in, this is the first time I was like the senior companion. I was coming in and I was going to help her set like a date and help her give up smoking, and I was all gung-ho. And I didn't take the time to get to know her. And that was a big mistake on my part. It caused more issues after that. Working with her, and I hadn't established that confidence. And I think in the mission, you at least have like these goals and things that you know that you want to accomplish. And you talk about those a lot, but you need to remember that you're dealing with other people and they need to be treated like people. And not that I wasn't treating her like a person. I like genuinely loved her, but I had my goal that I thought that she wanted as well, and that's what I was pushing for instead of realizing who she was and her, where if I pushed her too much, that was not going to be okay with her and would make her back off and not even want to be involved. So take the time to be yourself, and be loving, and realize that you're there because of your testimony. That's why they don't just send out people who've been trained for a long time. You need that human experience with teaching, and that is really, really important because your testimony matters. As small as you may think it is, the Lord works through us and our testimonies. And so after a while of butting heads with her and wondering why I felt like she really didn't want to talk to me, but she still wanted to be baptized, and I was really confused, and talking to my companion. You must be open to listening to your companion. They have great advice. She said that I needed to one day just go in and not feel like I had to teach a lesson. Just sit there and talk to her and really get to know her in her life. And it made all the difference. Like, we became better friends, and she trusted me a little bit more after that and was more open to doing things with the church, because you have to have a commonality for somebody to understand what you're saying. Some people are just willing and open and want to just hear about doctrine, but a lot of people that hasn't been their experience to be involved with church, and therefore you need to come to a common ground with them. But it's the most incredible thing to be able to share your testimony with another person and see them changing and go through those hard experiences and grow. I know that I grew a lot after that experience, and so I think that would be very important. I would really focus on teaching with the Spirit, which I did do, but I know it made a huge difference, because you as a person are not going to know the struggles of these individuals. You are not going to, as much as you sit there and analyze and try to understand them, there's only so much you're going to know about them. And about the gospel as well, you're just learning. And so choosing to teach by the Spirit, to pray before you go into every lesson, to take the time in the morning to really study and prepare for those people. Even if you may not teach them during the day, if there's a huge possibility that you may not, still prepare for them and listen to the Spirit, because the Spirit, Heavenly Father, knows what these people need. He will put them in your path. He will direct them, and He'll know when they're going to be open, and certain thing that you share will be there. The Preach My Gospel is inspired, and so as you study it, there will be a lot of doctrines and teachings that, as you study, the Spirit will be able to prompt you later. So being prepared is a really important thing. So not expecting that, okay, I'll just walk in and the Spirit will tell me what to do, but having a good balance between being prepared and teaching by the Spirit. So Rio Gallegos, it's very windy, more European city. All of Argentina is very more European than the rest of Latin America. There were a lot of people from Spain there that I would run into, little old ladies that had come over from Spain and still had their accents. I didn't stand out as much there because everyone was fair-skinned. They have three branches there, and they're their own district and are working really hard there. I was only there one transfer, and we whitewashed the area, and then I left. So I would say with at least like whitewashing an area, realize that there's going to be a lot of days where you're just trying to figure out what's going on and rely on the members and try to help them, like get involved with them. We went with the Relief Society the first couple of weeks. We would go once a week with them to go out and do visits with them, to go and find less active members, and like take advantage of the fact that these women want to go out with you, even if you like explain to them maybe that you don't have anybody to really go and teach, but take advantage of the fact that they're willing to go out and help you because they know people and know the area better than you will. So I started off in Puerto Madryn, and it's at the very northernmost part of the mission. And the first week when I got there, the first P day, I was in the area that's closest to the ocean, and we went out on the pier, and I got to see the whales jumping. It's a very interesting thing about that area is that that's the most southernmost beach that really is worthwhile to go to. So a lot of tourists will come in to go to the beach during the summer, not during the winter, and then they'll go out and see the whales. So that was a really incredible thing. Like my first P day was able to go and do. The area there is, I was in pretty flat ground. There's some areas that have a lot of hills. And even in my area, there was diversity of, some of it was paved, some of it was not. At least in Puerto Uno, where I was, they had, it was a little bit nicer, just that it was more paved, and families that had been in the church for a little bit longer. I just love that area. They are very welcoming and open and willing to give of their food, of their time. The members really want to help there with the missionary work, and we had a lot of the young single adults that would come out with us to go teach different people. They're willing to share with their family. They just need to have a little bit of confidence in you. So if you go and you talk to them and show that you're really willing to work, they have a little more confidence and will share a little bit more with you. So this wouldn't be true of every missionary there, but at least part of my area, I had a Bolivian like part of it was a lot of, like a neighborhood where a lot of Bolivians lived, which they're fabulous people, very hard workers. So like a good majority of my ward actually were people from Bolivia that had been living in the United States for a good like half of their life. So they're more Argentine. But yeah, that was Puerto Madryn. It was great. This wouldn't be everyone's experience, but someone that I taught there was this family. I met them the first day that I was there in the mission. Her name's Rosa, and like the rest of her family, she was a single mom of 5 kids, and wonderful, wonderful woman who she would laugh and help me laugh about my Spanish. But so I was there from end of September into December. So I was there in Puerto Madryn for 4.5 months, and we were there around Christmas time. And she, being a single mom, didn't have as much to give her kids. Her kids were like teenage years, and she had recently been laid off her job, so she really had no support. And she'd been baptized, but this Christmas they knew that they really weren't going to have anything. And it's a really big deal there to have like a lot of food at Christmas. That's part of like celebrating. They don't do as many presents, but food and fireworks are a really big deal. So she was actually going to like have her kids go with their father, who had been very abusive, and the kids actually really didn't like going with him because of many different reasons, but it wasn't a positive experience. But she was going to send them so that they would actually have food and other things on Christmas. So we knew this was going to happen, but we came over and we're just chatting with her. The kids were like, no, we're going to stay with you. We don't want you to have a horrible Christmas as well, being here by yourself. So a couple days before Christmas, we were over at their house just teaching, and she was expressing to us like these worries that she had. And she told us that Oh no, we kneeled down and prayed at the end of the lesson and just taught her and tried to like share with her the importance of praying and how Heavenly Father can help you. And so a couple days later, Christmas Eve, we went over to the house, and the atmosphere of the house was very different. They were all excited and happy. Like, wait, we were over here 2 days ago and you were all very sad, like did not want to have Christmas. What happened? And Rosa started sharing with us that the night before she had been putting her daughters to bed, and her youngest daughter knew that her mom was sad and said, Mom, let's say a prayer that we'll be able to have food for Christmas. And so they knelt down, and the youngest daughter, who was 7, to give a little bit of, to understand her a little better, she had a Book of Mormon that she couldn't really read, but she had like stickers of the number 8 all over it because she knew that when she was 8, she was going to be able to be baptized. And she wanted to be baptized so bad, like her sisters and her mom, that she always had like this Book of Mormon with all the number 8s on it. So she had all of them kneel down together and said a prayer that they'd be able to find food. So the next day Rosa went to the grocery store just to get a couple of things so they would have something. And some man saw her at when she was checking out, and they got talking. And he was like, well, you don't have enough for Christmas. Like, let's go back through the store, and went through the store with her and got more than they'd had in like the last month of food, so that they could have like this wonderful Christmas experience. And she was sharing this story just in tears. And my companion and I had been so worried that they wouldn't have anything, that we had like tried to put together some like banana bread to take over so that we could like make something with them, because Rosa didn't want us to like ask anybody for food, or didn't want us to make it a big deal. So we were all like in tears. It was just this huge miracle. We all knelt down and just said prayer of gratitude. And that was something I'll never forget, in that area, knowing that Heavenly Father does take care of His people, even if they, like Rosa was having a hard time. She'd relapsed into smoking again, so she was having a really hard time believing that her prayers were really going to matter. And so I know that the Lord really does take care of His people and really wants to help them. So like, have faith that there will be miracles, because the Lord will provide. Trelew, oh, that one's a fun one. The area that I was in, which is only this part of Trelew, you'll figure out when you come to the bus station. Be aware that there are these gypsies. They have like the bigger skirts and more typical like gypsy look that will be trying to sell you different things. They're very respectful of the missionary, so you really shouldn't worry about it. But in my area, they were there, and it was a little strange at first, because they had like their own like lots where they would sell cars, where they would put like, there'd be all these cars lined up and down the street, and they put like different bottles on them. And if there was a bottle on them, it could be whatever. It could have been a bottle of gasoline. It could have been a bottle of like old soda, but that meant the car was for sale. So that was a really interesting thing. And the gypsies have like another language. So if they don't want to talk to you, they'll start speaking in their language and be speaking to you in their language, which is interesting thing about Trelew that was different from the rest of it. There's a lot more like shopping, and more people work in like comercio, like the commerce. So if you do actually need to buy anything, that would be the place that would probably have the best options for buying things. And there are like 2 very strong stakes there. Like, those people have been members for a long time. There's a little area outside of it that's called Gaiman, that has like a lot of Welsh immigrants that have lived there. So, Trelew is great. Oh, Rio Grande. That was an interesting, like, traveling down there was quite the process. So I was in Comodoro. We left later in the evening and took a night bus all the way down there. Some missionaries would take like things to be able to sleep, because it's sometimes harder to sleep in the bus that's moving. I sort of got used to it and it was fine. But so we traveled, I think it took us 10 hours just to get down to Rio Gallegos. And there we switched, we had to wait a while, and then we switched over in a bus to then go, and we passed through like the border of Argentina and Chile and had to get out, and then you go through the whole process of going, like you're going to another country. Then you get back on the bus and you go to this big barge that like can fit massive semis in it, and you go across the Strait of Magellan, and you're still technically in Chile, and then you get back on the bus and travel through, and then you go back into Argentina. So that whole part took like 6 hours, and then we finally made it into Rio Grande. It is a great area. A lot of people down, like I said before, work in factories, and so don't have as much of a social structure there of people that have worked there for a really long time. So they love when they can be integrated into like the community of the church there, because people are just sort of living there by themselves. It is there are a lot of, at least in my area there are a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses and people that were very strong followers of the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses. Very, very windy. I really, really loved that area because the members were so willing to work with us, and it just seemed like there were people that were really, really willing to hear support, like the recent converts. They need the support and need the fellowshipping, even if they seem like they understand what's going on. They need the support, and from helping them, we were able to actually go and visit other non-member, or get more references to be able to go and visit people to teach. We visited some less actives there, and that's where we actually got one of like our golden investigators. And she was just living with a less active and decided to let us in and come and talk to her and share about the gospel, obviously. And she was really, really open, whereas her less active husband was not. But because she became so interested in the gospel and dragged him along to church and to be involved in other things, he decided to become more involved. So, the people there be willing to work with everyone. So then I went up to Comodoro, and I was on like the outskirts of Comodoro, so I wasn't in the city, in Palazzo, and it was people there were wonderful, very wonderful people that were actually from all over in Argentina that had moved there more for work and such. The ward there was really, really strong. We just sort of jumped onto what was already going on. It was nice being closer to the mission home, and we would go in for like our district meetings to the office, the mission office. So that was a really, really fun experience to be able to be so close to the center, because in the mission it's a lot more spread out, and sometimes when you're in the farther areas, you don't have as much interaction with other missionaries and knowing what's going on in the rest of the mission. So it was fun to be at the center of everything that's going on and see new missionaries as they come through, or people as they come to the leadership training conferences, and hear about what's going on with all of the other missionaries. I really enjoyed that. We did a lot more with like buses and such there, with traveling more than just walking, because in all of the areas you walk. But most of our streets were actually dirt streets there. Wonderful, wonderful families. I could share a lot more about like different teaching experiences. Oh, a wonderful so during that time they were really focused on having members invite people. So we were at church and this member had told us that he was going to bring some investigators, but church had already started and nobody showed up. And luckily my companion and I were still on the lookout to see if anybody was going to show up. And in walked in this family, 2 parents and then their daughter, and I was like, those are the people. So we like ran over, even though we were probably sort of interrupting sacrament meeting, we ran over and went and sat with them. And they ended up being this wonderful family that ended up getting married and baptized. And at that same time, there were several other families. And so the ward got very, very excited to be involved. But making sure to go out of your way to like sit with people makes a difference. So we sat with them and then they felt more comfortable. They hadn't really wanted to come and be involved, and they sort of did because their boss had invited them and they just recently moved there. So decided that they probably should they were like, okay, well, we want to make our boss happy, so we'll go. But like being friendly and willing to participate really helped. And the members love it. All of the little grandmas love it when you come and sit by them at church and want to talk to them. So extreme would be windy. It was, all of the ground was iced over. It was in Rio Grande that we went out and it's way below freezing. I can't remember how low it was, but everything was frozen over. You'd walk and it's like you're ice skating the whole time. And then there's wind, so the wind like picks up off the ice and it's just really, really cold, so much so that you would want to walk. Oh, take earmuffs. Like earmuffs will save your life because your ears will hurt because it's so cold. So I was in Rio Gallegos and just walking down the street, knocking on doors. And there was this really, I was wary of dogs. They had a lot of, bigger dogs that you just kept your distance. But there's some that are, wagging their tails and are happy and it's totally normal. So this day I had, my bag on and I had my coat draped over my bag and just carrying it around because it got too warm. Warm is relative, but walking around and I'm going up to knock on this door and I'm going up their path and they had a couple of dogs, which was really normal to have several dogs around the house all the time. And I'm walking up, we knock on the door and we're coming back and this dog had been sort of following us. And so I'd been eyeing it, but I sort of decided it wasn't that big of a deal. So I went up, knocked on the door and we were coming back and all of a sudden this dog came up at us. It was walking up faster, but I thought it was fine. And then all of a sudden it bit my coat, which was right next to my leg. So I felt the teeth, the mouth next to my leg. And it scared me so bad. I probably the whole neighborhood heard me scream, but yeah. So beware of the dogs. I still am very hesitant around big dogs that could possibly be. It doesn't happen all the time. There are a lot of really kind dogs. Just be aware that they are also there to protect their area. They're very territorial. So that would be the biggest encounter. We also went and saw penguins, which wouldn't necessarily be a normal encounter. But when I was in Rio Gallegos, a family took us down to the very point, down on the tip of South America, that we went and saw penguins down there. They're really cute. So, yeah. This one's funny, but in the moment it wasn't as funny. We were on the bus, and when you're on the bus, we'd been challenged to not sit as a companionship, still be close enough to each other that we could definitely see each other, but to go and sit by people and try to talk to them, just contacting, very normal. So we went and I sat down next to this older gentleman and I was sitting chatting with him and he became irate, so mad that I was talking to him about anything religious and started saying everything he could against the church, just yelling at me that the whole bus was uncomfortable, kept looking back. I'm just I understand it. That's very upsetting to you. I don't agree, but like that would be very upsetting and like full on yelling at me. My companion's just like, I don't know what to do. And luckily, like at a point, don't try to argue with them. Like it's not even worth it to try. But this woman like turned around and like gave him sort of a glare. And other people, you could tell they were going to decide if they were going to intervene. And this was only a couple minutes, so it wasn't like 10 minutes that he was yelling at me, but a couple minutes that he was just full on yelling at me. And then it gets closer to a bus stop and he just like stands up and leaves. Like, okay, see you later. But yeah, that was the experience. I was like, why did you decide to yell at me? I just said hello to you and said that I was a missionary, and you started questioning why I was a missionary and everything about it. So just smile and wave. Keep going on. This doesn't happen often. This was actually the only time it ever happened in my mission. I had a companion that took it upon herself to talk to every single person. I think I tried to take a little bit more judgment. Anyway, it's fine. But so we went up and talked to this man on the side of the road. He was in crutches, and you could tell he was homeless. And normally, I think judge me if you will, but tried to avoid people that I thought maybe could possibly be taking drugs or other things. And so I wasn't willing to approach him, but she approached him, we talked to him, it was fine, and we invited him to church and he decided to come. So we went and picked him up. He was living in a car, and so just walked with us to church on his crutches, but because of his crutches we were late to church. And as we walk into church, all of the members look at us. And I had just whitewashed this area. This was my last area in Trelew. I'll probably tell you I'm crazy. But I walked in this was our second Sunday there. Like, they didn't really know us. All of the members look at us. They're like, oh no. And so we go through sacrament meeting, and you can smell like the alcohol on this man. Like, it just is so potent that even being close to him is like it's too much. And I, like, at that point had gotten used to smelling it a little bit more. So, but it was more normal to smell it. And so this man just like reeked. And so we get out and we're like heading to Sunday school, and several like men, like the leaders, came and took us aside, and they're like, sisters, like, you really need to be careful. And like they told their wives then to come and tell us, like, sisters, you really need to be careful, because this man was addicted to drugs, and he would smell like gasoline. And at one point he had gotten so high in a house down there that the gasoline had fallen over, and then it had caught on fire and like burned down several houses. So like everyone in the area knew who he was, because he had been the man who had burned down several houses. And so a lot of people had outcast him because of that, and he was living in a car, and was still like had a lot of issue with drinking and smoking and such. So members became very, very worried. I would not say that was the best way to make luckily it wasn't the first impression, but members were a little bit more hesitant about who we brought to church after that. And nothing ever happened with him. Like, we went with a member and sat by his car and taught him once, and he just then wasn't interested after that. So we were fine, and we're smart about it and everything, but just be aware. Members will they'll come and make sure that you're okay, which is we're very, very considerate of them. So this one actually isn't mine, so I'm sorry to my companion, but we were in the MTC, and we were obviously just trying to speak, and my companion said something like, she did get a word wrong, but I can't remember what word it was. And then she was trying to say she was embarrassed. So she said, estoy embarazada. And like all of the teachers started laughing. The rest of us were like, I have no idea what she just said. But she was like telling everyone that she was pregnant, like just yelling it, like, I'm pregnant. And luckily it was just with all of like the MTC teachers, but it was so funny. She was just telling everyone she's pregnant instead of being embarrassed. So be aware. For a while, like in my first area, I thought that like the chapter of chapter in the Book of Mormon was capítulo instead of capítulo. And so for some reason they would always be sort of chuckling when I would say what chapter they should be going into in the scriptures. And then finally, like, one of my investigators says it. She's like, okay, vamos a ir a capítulo, whatever. And I was like, wait, why are you saying it that way? And she's like, that's how you say it, sister, all the time. And I was like, oh, my bad. So I will never forget the power of prayer. I've had so many experiences in the mission. I shared one about Rosa and her Christmas miracle. And it's a very common thing that you pray all of the time. But I will never forget how you can turn to the Lord at any point. As you're walking down the street, you don't even have to stop and actually close your eyes, but still say a prayer and pray that somebody will come up walking up to you, and somebody, you will actually be able to express yourself really well, or that for lunch you will actually have something that you really want to eat. The Lord is listening. And after praying for so many different things, I will never be able to say that there isn't power in prayer. Which I did know before the mission, but not to the same extent, because before my mission, I wasn't on my own so often. Yes, you're always with a companion, but the two of you are alone. And you have members that'll support and a lot of help, but turning to prayer is most important. Since I've come home, I've been able to implement it a little bit more into daily circumstances, and know that I can talk to him about anything and receive peace or strength or understanding, clarification about things that I'm worried about. I realized in Rio Grande, I'd known this a lot before, that the Lord was very mindful of people. But when I was in Rio Grande, we were teaching this one family that we'd gone to the less active, and when we knocked on his door, his girlfriend that he was living with, answered the door and invited us in and talked to us, and was willing to listen. I knew that she was really willing to be baptized, and we had finally taught her, and she'd come to church enough, and we'd invited her to be baptized, and she finally she prayed about it and felt really good about being baptized on a specific day. So we were working to make sure her papers. It's harder sometimes in Argentina. It should be a little bit easier now because they just had a law changed, but for a long time it was really hard to be able to get people to be married. It just was a lot of paperwork, and especially his girlfriend, she's from another country, and therefore she'd lost her birth certificate, which was nearly impossible to be able to be married in Argentina without your birth certificate, even if you did have identification and such. So we were working really hard to be able to help her. They help them with their desires. They really wanted to be married and for her to be baptized and him to come back to church. And it passed that day, and we just kept working, and we had tried so many things and gone out of our way to try to contact people in Paraguay to be able to find her birth certificate. We had done so many things. And then finally one day we went to their house, and we're teaching, just to went by to check up on them. And the girlfriend pulled us aside and said, well, actually we were just talking with her. The less active had been sort of avoiding us the last couple of days, but we were okay, whatever, something personal is going on. And she pulled us aside and said, he's not going to tell you, but when he's at work, he smokes with his friends. And he's not, like, I keep trying to tell him, like, we've decided that we're going to do this. You told the sisters that you would, like, follow the word of wisdom, but you're not. Like, that is not okay. And she would be really, really mad about it, and it was causing tension in their relationship because she's like, you told the sisters that you were going to do this and you're not. Like, that is not okay. And so she's like, I'm going to tell them. So she told us that he was there. It was a thing that he just did with friends, was to smoke. And he didn't want to tell them that he was coming back to church and that he didn't want to smoke with them. And it would be too much of a temptation. And so we, like, went to his house, and he finally, like, sat down and talked with us. And we had, like, a very honest conversation about what was happening and how we felt about it, and didn't approach it in a way of, like, you're doing something really bad. But, well, like, he already knew. He had so much guilt that he didn't want to even talk to us. He knew it was wrong. So we, like, sat down and had this really great conversation. And I had, in the MTC and around that time, I've been thinking a lot about the atonement, and realized personally, and had, like, my own personal experience with the atonement, and going through real repentance, and I'd been really focusing on that at the time, and I had just been doing that for myself. But when we went and sat down and talked to him, I just remember being able to share my experience in such a way that was so powerful, that it can only be done with the Spirit, obviously, but that I felt like he really understood how I felt and how important it was to me, and how much, like, Jesus Christ had been able to help me get over, well, mine wasn't that big, but, like, I was able to testify about the atonement in a way that he could relate. And he decided to start giving up smoking, and he did. And it was incredible how I think the Lord had his own timing, that he waited a little while before their papers were finally, they finally were able to receive their papers and be married and then be baptized. And they had a lot of other really incredible experiences that strengthened their testimony. And I think the Lord knew that they needed them before they got baptized, and they needed to go through that process. And not everyone does, but I was able to learn that the Lord has his timing and knows his people really well. He knows them specifically, and their needs and their worries and what they're getting caught up on, even if you as a missionary don't know that. And I'm so grateful that he is in control of the whole process, the whole missionary. These are his people. Like, you're there. He's entrusting you with his people. He will cause their own personal earthquakes to happen. Just like Alma the Younger had his own earthquake, and, like, there was a tremor wherein he was listening to the angel. Like, I don't know if the rest of the people knew that there had been an earthquake at the time, but at least that shook his foundation and changed who he was. And, like, the people, when you teach them these principles, it will shake their very foundation, and it will change their life. And you need to realize that that's happening, and be patient with them. But it's incredible to be a part of and see. And this man was able to change and is now a worthy priesthood holder, because the Lord shook his foundation and wouldn't let him progress when he really wasn't willing or prepared to. I am so excited for you that you get to go to the best mission in the world. Everyone will argue that they have their best mission, but the Comodoro Rivadavia Mission is the best. Even if you may not be able to pronounce the name yet, it is an incredible experience to be able to go and serve the people there. There are people that are there for you to go and teach. There are people that need your life experience, your testimony, your strengths, your weaknesses. They need you. And don't let Satan or anybody else tell you that you aren't going to be a good missionary, that you can't do this. there will be many different times that you probably won't feel as excited, but it will change your life. It'll change how you view the world. It will open up. You'll have these whole other experiences that you will never imagine that you will have. And so just go and do. Be excited. I'm excited for you that you get to be a part of such a great work